Pia sat cross-legged on her living room floor, the lyric sheet spread before her on the coffee table. The apartment was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic filtering in through the cracked window. She traced her fingers over the title, Fragments of Light, and then the words below it. They weren't just lyrics. They were raw, poignant, and alive with emotion. Beneath the amber glow, where shadows meet the sun, the fleeting moments whisper, telling stories left undone. We are fragments of light in a world of broken time, searching for the pieces we'll never truly find. Her heart clenched. The words resonated with her in a way she couldn't explain, as if Luca had reached inside her and pulled out the parts she'd tried to keep hidden. She wondered what kind of life had inspired such a song. Unable to focus, Pia grabbed her camera from the counter and flipped through the photos she'd taken of him earlier. Each one was better than the last. Luca bathed in golden light, his eyes closed, his fingers gliding over the strings with precision and passion. There was something almost ethereal about him in those moments, as if he belonged to a world just beyond her reach. Her phone buzzed, breaking her reverie. She glanced at the screen. Her best friend Carla had sent a voice note. Pia, don't forget about the exhibit tomorrow night. I expect you there. Dress like the creative genius you are, and don't bail on me this time. Pia sighed. Carla had been on her case for weeks to attend the photography exhibit at the gallery downtown. It wasn't Pia's own work being displayed. She hadn't mustered the courage to submit her portfolio, but the event was a chance to network, Carla insisted. And yet, her mind drifted back to Luca. Where had he gone? Would she ever see him again? Pull it together, she muttered to herself. She couldn't chase a musician she barely knew through the streets of the city. She had work to do, places to be. The next evening, dressed in a flowy black dress and armed with her portfolio, Pia stepped into the gallery. The space was alive with energy. Walls adorned with stunning photographs, conversations buzzing over glasses of wine, and the low hum of jazz music playing in the background. Carla spotted her immediately, dragging her into a bear hug. You made it! I'm proud of you, she said, grinning. I told you I'd come, Pia said, smiling despite herself. Okay, let's mingle. There are some people here you need to meet. Carla's eyes sparkled with determination. An hour passed in a blur of introductions and small talk. Pia found herself standing near the back of the room, flipping through a series of black and white portraits, when a familiar sound caught her ear. A guitar. She turned, her breath catching. Across the room, Luca was perched on a small stage, his guitar resting comfortably on his knee. His fingers moved effortlessly over the strings, coaxing out a melody she recognized instantly. Fragments of Light. He looked different tonight, clean-shaven, his hair tied back in a loose bun, wearing a dark blazer that somehow suited him despite his wandering artist vibe. But his music was the same, carrying the room with soulful resonance. Carla nudged her. Isn't he amazing? That's Luca de Angeles. He's a friend of the gallery owner. Travels all over Europe performing, real bohemian type. Pia's mind raced. He hadn't mentioned that. Then again, what had she really expected? She barely knew him. Luca's eyes swept the room as he played, his expression calm and unreadable, until they landed on her. For a fraction of a second, he faltered, his fingers missing a chord. He recovered quickly, his lips quirking into a small smile as if to say, "Fancy seeing you here." Pia's heart thudded in her chest. This wasn't just chance. It couldn't be. Before she could stop herself, she started moving toward him, weaving through the crowd. As the last note of his song hung in the air, the applause erupted around them, but Pia barely noticed. "Luca," she said softly when she reached him. "Pia." His voice was warm, like the music he just played. "I didn't think I'd see you again." "Neither did I," she admitted. He set his guitar aside and stepped down from the stage, standing close enough that she could feel the heat of his presence. "So, what brings you here tonight?" "I could ask you the same thing," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I didn't know you were connected to a place like this." He shrugged, a hint of mischief in his smile. "Life has a funny way of crossing paths, doesn't it?" As they stood there, the room seemed to fade into the background. Pia felt the weight of something unspoken between them, something fragile yet electric, waiting to be explored. "Do you want to get out of here?" he asked suddenly. Her breath caught. She should have said no. Should have stayed to mingle like Carla wanted, but the pull toward him was impossible to resist. "Okay," she said, her voice barely a whisper. And just like that, they stepped into the night, two strangers drawn together by the same melody, both wondering what story their next chapter would hold. The cool evening air wrapped around them as Pia and Luca stepped onto the quiet cobblestone street outside the gallery. The hum of the city was distant now, replaced by the occasional sound of footsteps and muffled laughter from nearby cafes. Luca adjusted the strap of his guitar case, slung over his shoulder. "So," he said, glancing at her, "what made you leave the exhibit for a stranger with a sixth string?" Pia smirked, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Maybe I was curious about the man who handed me a lyric sheet and then vanished." "Ah, so I'm a mystery to you," Luca teased, his voice low and warm. "A bit," she admitted, looking up at him. "And you're not making it any easier by showing up at a place like that. I mean, a gallery? You're more of a..." She trailed off, searching the right word. "A street corner type?" he finished, laughing. "Not what I meant," she said, rolling her eyes but smiling. "You surprised me, that's all." He shrugged, his expression softening. "Life surprises me too, sometimes, like finding you in that crowd tonight." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. Pia didn't know how to respond, so she turned her attention to the city around them instead. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the glow of streetlights casting long shadows. Luca broke the quiet. "So, photographer, what's your story?" Pia hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "Not much of a story. I take photos. I travel. I try to figure out what I'm doing with my life." "That sounds like a story to me," Luca said, his tone encouraging. "Why photography?" "It's the only thing that makes sense," she said after a moment. "The world feels chaotic most of the time, but when I'm behind the lens, I can frame it, make it manageable, beautiful even." He nodded as if he understood completely. "And the traveling?" She smiled faintly. "That's just me running from one place to the next, hoping I'll eventually find where I'm supposed to be." Luca stopped walking, turning to face her. "Do you think it's a place you're looking for? Or a person?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unexpected. Pia opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came out. She didn't know, or maybe she did, but wasn't ready to admit it. "Sorry," Luca said, his smile apologetic. That was too much. No, she said quickly. It's just a good question. They stood there for a moment, the city moving around them, before Luca gestured toward a small park up ahead. Come on, let me play you something. The park was quiet, with only a few empty benches and the soft rustling of trees in the breeze. Luca chose a bench under a street lamp and unzipped his guitar case. He tuned the strings quickly, his fingers moving with practiced ease. What's this one about? Pia asked as he settled the guitar on his lap. He glanced at her, his eyes glinting with mischief. Why don't you tell me when I'm done? Then he began to play. The melody was soft and introspective, weaving through the night like a whisper. It was different from what she'd heard him play before. Less polished, more raw. As the music unfolded, Pia felt as though he was telling her a secret, one she wasn't entirely sure she should hear. When the last note faded, Luca looked at her expectantly. Well? Pia took a moment to collect her thoughts. It felt like longing, like you're searching for something but you're not sure what it is. Luca's lips curved into a small smile. You're good at this. Am I right? Maybe, he said cryptically. Or maybe it's just what you wanted to hear. Pia laughed softly, shaking her head. You're impossible. Guilty, Luca said, his grin widening. He leaned back on the bench, cradling the guitar in his lap. Your turn. My turn for what? To share something, he said. A photo, a story, anything. Pia hesitated but reached into her bag, pulling out her camera. She flipped through the images until she found one of the shots she'd taken of him the previous evening. She handed him the camera, watching as his face shifted while he studied the photo. This is... He paused, his voice quieter now. Is this how you see me? Pia nodded, suddenly shy. It's just a moment. But yeah, I guess it is. Luca stared at the photo for a long time before handing the camera back. You're good at this, he said again. But this time, his voice carried something deeper. They sat in silence for a while after that, the night folding around them like a blanket. Pia didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like she wasn't running. Maybe she was exactly where she was supposed to be.